What's up, traders? Zach here from the Trading Network. Hope you guys are doing well. It is Wednesday, March 24th, and I have another daily market profile recap for both ES and the NQ futures markets. So we are going to start off with ES and the key levels for ES. I will pull up my trade plan right here, and we will dig right in. So starting off with the prior range high at 39.3850, that was the first and highest level I was looking at, just because we were looking to open quite a ways lower than that level today. Second level was the prior POC at 39.2575. Next level was the prior value area low at 39.16. Next level was the overnight low at 38.92. And just below that, I was looking at, last but not least, the prior range low at 38.9050. Let's go over to NQ real quick, and we'll go over those levels briefly. First and foremost, again, with that prior range high at 13.172. Next level was the overnight high at 13.145. You can see this guy right here. And we didn't even touch either of those levels, nor the naked POC that we had from yesterday either. So that third level to the downside, or in general that I was looking at, I should say, was 13.57. That was the value area low from yesterday. Right below that, we had the overnight point of control at 13,040. And the overnight low, these two actually were some of the only key levels that we hit in the entire session, but we did end up hitting them in the initial balance as well. So you can see we got 57, 40, and 16 hit in that IB. So last but not least, after the overnight low, I was looking at yesterday's low at 12,979, and we got much further below that level as well, which we will get into in a little while once we move on to the targets. So moving into the news events and the headline risk. Mr. Powell has been speaking quite a bit the last 2 weeks really, and it has created a very interesting risk-off environment, if you will. There's been a lot of tension, a lot of uncertainty in regards to what is going to happen in general with inflation, the fiscal policy, and things like that. And just generally speaking, when Jerome Powell is speaking himself, everybody is kind of at the edge of their seat waiting to see or hear what he's going to say and what effect that will have on the markets. So we did have some high impact events today, so something to keep in mind. And with that said, his testimony started 30 minutes after the open. So we started pretty early today, which basically allowed for very volatile and wild price action throughout the entire session. So with that said, let's get into the analysis from the pre-market this morning. Overnight inventory was 100% long on NQ and closer to 75% long on ES, which is still considered quite an imbalance. So what I mean by that, for those of you who are not familiar, let me pull my levels back up real quick. You can see we have settlement right here. We have the overnight profile. Most of the, or a large majority of the time and price action was spent above that settlement price. And if we do that same thing on NQ, pulling up my levels here, you can see that settlement price was right here, 13,006, and the entire overnight profile was indeed above settlement price. So that means that overnight inventory is 100% long. And generally speaking, the market makers and the people, or let me say it this way, the market makers are the people whose job it is to keep the market efficient, right? And I'm getting to a point with this. And the reason that I'm saying that is because the overnight inventory can give us a lot of good edge. It can tell us how it's positioned, first and foremost, obviously, and how the overnight inventory is positioned can give us a higher probability as soon as we view where that is in relation to settlement. So if overnight inventory is 100% long, that means that the entire overnight profile is above settlement price. That increases the probability significantly of that overnight inventory being corrected to the downside, or faded, if you will, however you want to think of it. So when we have a 100% long profile, high probability that New York comes in, sells it off. If we have a 100% short profile, high probability that New York steps in and buys it up. So that is something to keep in mind if you guys are getting into market profile or looking for new ways to utilize the profile and different strategies you can use with that. So with that said, NQ 100% long, ES 75% long. This means that the majority of price action took place above the overnight session or above the settlement price. So when the overnight inventory is in balance, kind of just reiterating what I said, we have a higher probability to see that overnight inventory corrected to whatever side the opposite of the overnight inventory. So keep that in mind, and that is something that you can pay attention to on a daily basis. So with that said, today I was looking at the overnight high at 39.19 on ES as the line in the sand, and I was looking at yesterday's volume point of control at 13.91 on NQ. So you can see yesterday's VPOC 13.91. This is right around this area right here. I'm going to draw a box around the VPOC. So it's actually very, very subtle on this profile in this particular instance, but you can see it's this brighter purple line right here. So that is where the most volume was done, and of course this is where the most time was spent. So fairly close to each other, but I was looking at this as the line in the sand, and we couldn't even get up to that level. So let's go over to ES. You can see line in the sand there was that 39.19 level. 39.19 was indeed reached, but we couldn't breach that level and hold above it. So this was my line in the sand, the overnight high, but we indeed struggled to move and hold above that level, and we saw that downside price action very strong, especially towards that end of the day. So if we could move above those line in the sand levels on open, I was looking for a move back into yesterday's high, the overnight high from the previous session, and back into this point of control from the March 18th session on ES. And if we could not, it's very similar on NQ, I was looking for a move down on both, but you can see, just to show you guys, super similar structure. So on NQ to the upside, this was the line in the sand level, that 13.90, and I was looking at yesterday's high, overnight high, and then higher levels, right? Same thing on ES. Line in the sand, I was looking at yesterday's high, overnight high from the previous session, and then the prior range high from the session before that. So a lot of times if you're trading NQ and ES, or you're doing market profile analysis on both of them, you can fairly easily see very accurate comparisons and similarities between the two in regards to the profile structure. NQ will typically be more volatile, the moves will be more exaggerated, but the profile structure a lot of times and the idea behind that profile structure is indeed the same. So that was what I was looking for before the open, and we will move on down to the scenarios here. Just to reiterate, 39.19, 13.91, line in the sand levels, and we just discussed what levels I was looking at on the upside, and of course on the downside I was looking at the overnight VPOC on ES, the overnight low, yesterday's low, and lower. And we will get into a little bit more about how I took a measured move today. So this is actually the second day in a row that I was able to take a measured move based off the profile and essentially find a really good target for that end of the day flush, both yesterday and today that happened. So I'll show you guys how that happened. You know what, I'll actually do it right now. So what I did and what you can do based on how the profile is positioned is you can take the measurement of yesterday's session, for instance, which was 48 points, and you can superimpose that on a level from either the overnight session or a level from that previous session, and you can get a measured move, and it is quite accurate in many instances. Now, what I will say first and foremost is in order for this to work with the highest probability, price must open within range and value. So when price opens within the previous range and within the previous value area, that increases the probability of this working, essentially. So you can see if we zoom in here, O period, we actually opened slightly outside of value by about 2 points. Pretty negligible, I will say, especially on ES. So you could consider this in range, slightly out of value, and that is still a significant high probability to be able to take that measured move. So what I did was I grabbed this range, right? I'm using the ruler tool from NinjaTrader, and I'm taking this 48-point range, and I'm saying, okay, if yesterday's initial balance high is the high of day, for instance, where would that give me a measured move to? Well, that would give me a measured move right down to 38.85, which coincidentally lines up right with this previous overnight low. Now, if I moved it down and I said, okay, let's take the measured move from 39.25. Well, that pinpoint accuracy gets us the measured move to today's low, which is pretty incredible. So I just wanted to quickly explain that. But when you see that we open within range, within the previous session's range and the previous session's value area or very close to it, take a measurement from the previous session. 48 points. You can see it down here. I have my profile labels up. Taking this measurement again using the ruler tool. You can see this box. It says 48 right here. I'm just grabbing this and I'm basically superimposing it over these levels from yesterday, right? So you have, here's one target. You know, you do it from there. There's another potential target. And you just can also watch price, right? So today we used this level. We used the 39.31 POC from the 22nd as the high of the day. So our measured move, technically, if we took it directly from this high of day, it would be 38.82, which is within about 5 points of our actual low of day there. So whether or not you get the exact level, you can get very, very close and get an incredible probability on your side, or a probability shift on your side, I should say, when using these measured moves. And it works for the upside as well. So you can take a measurement for the downside, or you could take a couple measurements for the downside and a couple for the upside, you know, like this. You know, say we use the overnight high as, you know, low of day, for instance. That gives you opportunity or areas to look at on both sides. And you can say, okay, well, we have the line in the sand, right? 39.19. And if 39.19 doesn't hold, then I'm looking for the move to the downside. If we hold 39.19, then I'm looking for the move to the upside through these prior profile levels and ultimately up into my measured move. So that is something really cool that you guys can continue to practice, continue to pay attention to, and use to your advantage. So let us get into the summary with the targets here. So I think I actually changed my ticks per level. So my line in the sand down here was 39.20. So give or take a point, if you will. But on the upside, the only targets that we got hit were the first two. So we hit 39.25.75, which was the previous point of control right here that we discussed. And we hit that 39.31 level, which ended up being the high of the day. So other than that, we did not have any upside targets hit, and we got that downside flush, and we stayed strong to the downside for a large majority of the session. So below 39.19, our first downside target to get hit was 39.16.25. You can see that value area low from yesterday right there. Second downside target was 39.08.25. You can see that nicely right there. That was the overnight low from the March 22nd into the March 23rd glowback session. The third downside target that we got hit was the 39.0350 level. That was the range low from not yesterday's session, but Monday's range low. And that got hit, not in the initial balance, but that got hit a little after the initial balance was formed. We got that, again, fierce flush to the downside, and sellers were clearly in control for a majority of the day. Second to last target was 38.97. If I zoom out a little bit, you can still see it here, but let me make it a little bit more clear here. So 38.97 was the overnight point of control from the March 21st into 22nd glowback session. And that was another later target hit in the day. And last but not least, we had 38.85 hit. 38.85 being that overnight low from that very same session that we were just looking at, which was that March 21st into March 22nd glowback session right here. So let's get into the NASDAQ targets. Flipping over to the NQ profile here, we will see that it was very strong to the downside on NQ, and we did not hit any of our upside targets hit. So we will move right into our downside targets. Again, that line in the sand was right here, that 1391 level, which was yesterday's volume point of control from the regular trading hour session. And below that, first target that we got hit was the 1357 level. That was the value area low from yesterday, which we talked about earlier, which was a key level as well. Second downside target was 1339, and we can see 1339 was this overnight point of control right here, 1340, 1339, give or take a point or so on NQ. And this was, again, hit in the initial balance. So third downside target was just below that by about 20 points or so, and that was 1316. That was the overnight low from the most recent Globex session, March 23rd into March 24th, just to confirm that. And the next downside target that was hit was right above that 13,000 even level and right below, 14 points below our previous target here, 13,002. So just to kind of pause for a second and give you guys kind of a real world example. You know, when you have, or when you're using my profile or my trade plans, you can take the line of the sand, you could mark it off, and you can create these trade setups or scenarios in your head where you say, okay, if Zach's line in the sand gets broken and we start rejecting from the opportunity zone, if you guys are familiar with my op zone strat, which is in the FFT course, I will link that above if you guys don't have that. Or if you guys just have your own trending strategy, or you are comfortable following a trend, you can say, okay, if we start trending, if we break the line in the same level to the downside, let me get short, let me hold it to Zach's lower targets and see reaction there. So for instance, if you guys did that today, even with one contract, significant opportunity, one and done trade opportunities, throughout the entire day when it comes down to it. So with that said, I won't get too much into a tangent in regards to how we can use these specifically, but I will start to show you guys more and more opportunity and more examples in relation to, or in regards to the candlestick chart versus the market profile. So last targets that we'll check out, last target was actually quite a bit below that 13,002 level. It was 12,963. And 12,963 was the overnight high from the March 21st into March 22nd session right here. So I'll just scoot this over. And you can see that was one of my further downside targets. And that was 100 points from our high of the day. So when we moved through that level, it was pretty much opening the floodgates to these lower levels in this profile in particular. When we live above specific levels and then we come back and we revisit, and we haven't visited these levels or this area in quite some time, that gives larger players good opportunity to trap longs at some of these levels and continue to push price down and really just cause as much pain as they possibly can, which is really their goal, to take advantage of retail traders and use them to their advantage, or use us to their advantage when it comes down to it. So with that said, let's hop over briefly to the regular chart, and I'll show you guys just a quick example of what I was talking about here. All right, so just wanted to briefly show you guys this. This is ES this morning, and you can see we have our line in the sand here, 39.19, and we opened up, we came up, we moved above this level. We had quite a large block sell. This is 540 contracts sold right here at one time, one market order, and you see that we got a massive flush to the downside right after that big move. So what I just wanted to quickly show you here is use these line in the sands and these levels, from the profile in general, as levels to take trades off of, targets, etc. So when you take a trade like this, or when you see a setup like this where you say, okay, here's the line in the sand, if we can't move above this level and hold above it, let me take a short if I see something like bearish divergence, which we did have here on a couple of our proprietary oscillators, as you see, as well as cumulative delta. So that is right here, just really a one and done trade opportunity. And you can see how strong the selling pressure was on both of these moves right here. So if you can keep an eye out for of course, the line in the sand from my trade plans, but not only that, using them in combination with the indicators, from, the TTN indicator package or whatever indicators you're already using and familiar with, that is going to give you an edge and going to give you a ton of great opportunity with not a lot of risk involved. You can take it on the lower high right here. You see that? So here's the div, of course. Then we have the lower high, and this is a really safe entry. You can throw a stop loss right above the high of course, that divergence right there, and that gives you good protection. And you know, if price comes above the top of this candle, then you know we're very likely to trade up to this prior POC as opposed to move down. So that is just one quick example that you guys can use. And obviously, you know, we moved through that level, but not only were there opportunities at that level, there were opportunities around this prior POC, which was in the trade plan. You can see we had very similar setups. So we had bearish divergence right here as well. And there's another very, very similar setup. You can see there's the lower high right there. And boom. That, I mean, if you take that, not only a one and done for the day, you could be done for the week right there, catching a 20-point move on ES, even with one contract. So just a quick example and a quick reminder to make sure that you guys are utilizing these tools to the best of your advantage. And just to wrap up here, I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time to watch this content. If you do like what you see, please feel free to like and subscribe down below. Also, if you want to learn more about joining the trading network, first and foremost, check out the links in the description below where you can find a link to our free Facebook group where I release these trade plans on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, every day at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. You can also get access to our website, thetradingnetwork.io, where you can purchase one-on-one mentorship with me. You can also learn more about the Trading Network Proprietary Indicator Package, which we just briefly discussed, as well as joining the Trading Network private Discord, where you can watch me trade live every day, Monday through Friday, again at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And last but not least, you can purchase access to the Fundamentals of Futures Trading course, which is a comprehensive course designed for traders of all skill levels, which goes over multiple strategies for varying market conditions, as well as trading psychology, mindset techniques, and much more. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video.